welcome to the Craft Brewed Music Podcast, the official podcast of Craft Brewed Music, the home of small batch streaming. Here we explore better music for serious listeners and those who create it. I'm Brian Horner, founder and curator of Craft Brewed Music, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host Aaron Stayman, a Craft Brewed Music artist. Aaron, joining us from Seattle. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Brian. Great to talk to you.
It's an exciting occasion. We're taping the first episode of the Craft Brewed Music Podcast. I started Craft Brewed Music a couple years ago as a home for off-the-beaten-path music, what we call better music for serious listeners. A big part of our ethic is partnership with artists. We've got a 50-50 profit-sharing model, and we thought it would be really interesting to start a podcast to get to know some of those artists better.
I think that's a great idea.
And for me, it's really important to have Aaron with me, not only because you don't want to listen to me alone on this thing, but Aaron's been a big musical influence on me since we were, 15, 16. We went to school together in upstate New York, Cooperstown, New York, and played in a band together and have made music ever since then in different formats. And Aaron's gone, now as a partner in this company and one of our artists and one of my best friends. So it's really, I think, appropriate and fun to have you be part of it.
Yeah, it's a huge honor for me, Brian. It's the whole streaming service is such a great idea, and I really feel strongly in the mission, and it's a real proud moment for me to be involved like this.
We've talked a lot about what this is, better music for serious listeners. I'm an artist manager, and I've tended through my career to focus on music that sort of falls across genre boundaries. It's not exactly this, it's not exactly that. Where do I find it in the record store? So that's kind of how we got here. I wanted to shine a light on that music.
Brian, there are a multitude of streaming services out there now for people to access the music they like, the music they know. What is the place for craft brewed music in this environment?
Yeah, it's we're not trying to compete with or take the place of the big services. You're always going to have a place for Spotify in your life, a place for Apple Music. What I'm trying to do is create kind of that non-chain experience. We're curated by humans, largely by me. It's not about AI. It's not about algorithms. And it's a place to find, what is, this is all subjective, but what I think is some of the best music in the world, best artists in the world, and find them. And you wouldn't have the means to otherwise necessarily. This is stuff that you wouldn't happen upon in, on almost all of the playlists that exist. I can't think of any that exist that are highlighting this kind of music. And so it's just different. It's very niche. This is music that it's substantial and accessible, but it's not mainstream stuff, and I think anybody who's listening to it is going to discover a lot of stuff that they like, some stuff that they don't like. Hopefully, at the very least, they find it all interesting. But it's with that purpose in mind. It's a discovery platform, and it's about kind of challenging yourself and expanding your palette.
Well, let's listen to one of those artists now.
Yeah, we'll play Francis Lucacore. This is actually a fairly recent signing, really a beautiful sound that I thought was really different. We're going to play Who Do You Run From?
Reach out for it. Leave your things behind. Bear in mind, the sun will shine. Rain will dry. Clouded eyes. Who do you run from? Why don't you come home to your lover's side? Lean upon the friends who see. Climb into the banyan tree. In the hour of the wolf I meet thee. And when you wander from the bower, I'll do my best to try and see you where you really are. Remind you how we're not so far from the grave, but I'll be the one to wake you now.
What makes a craft brewed music artist? What is the special sauce that that catches your attention and makes you want to make it part of your roster?
Well, that's a good question, and it's a hard one to answer. I think of that. I think of a craft brewed artist as being one that fits my craft aesthetic, and so then the question becomes, how do I define that aesthetic? And that's difficult. It's, if I'm honest, it's largely, kind of a gut feeling. There's some of our artists that very clearly and easily fit the bill, fit this genre almost that we're creating here. And those are the artists that are very clearly blending a lot of different styles, a lot of different genres and influences. Where it gets a little bit harder is with something that's more squarely in, say, the Americana vein, or more clearly a certain thing. And so then it kind of comes down to quality. Is this something that is outside the mainstream in terms of it hasn't been discovered yet? It doesn't have mainstream acceptance. And is it really great? And acknowledging that that's subjective, I get to I get to decide. And so that's kind of, obviously that's a fun part of it. Anytime I go to work and it involves listening to music, that's a good day. But that that's how I'm thinking about it. If there's music that fits the bill that's too famous, where the artist is too famous to fit into what we're doing. Nora Jones is a great example. Particularly that first album was, it was on Blue Note, but it wasn't really jazz. It wasn't really country. There were kind of hints of a bunch of things, and it was magic. But the world had the good fortune of having that, blow up, and so we all got to hear that. She would be very squarely in what we're doing, except that she's already huge. So we're looking for those undiscovered bits of magic. This band is another one that's kind of, to me, quintessential craft brewed music. Oon, 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 the bassoon bass duo of Paul Hansen and Ariana Kapp. Paul Hansen is this, otherworldly, I guess, to use too narrow a term, jazz bassoonist. Also, a studio saxophonist. He's played with like Eddie Money and this wide range of stuff. But I first was exposed to him when he was playing with Bela Fleck and the Flecktones as a guest, and he and this amazing bassist Ariana Kapp have a couple projects together, and really amazing unclassifiable stuff. This is Serpentique.
Brian, when we were 15 in upstate New York and sharing music and listening to music, uh,
In the great Larry Mondello.
and the an amazing eclectic ensemble known as Larry Mandello. Um,
If I had played a little more in tune in Larry Mondello, they would be a contender for craft brewed music.
I think they would. It was very adventurous for a group of teenagers in upstate New York in that period of time. And I listened back, and while some of my own playing is cringeworthy, I'm nonetheless stunned at how bold we were in our stylistic choices.
Well, and you can't argue with selling out of 300 cassettes.
That's true. That's true.
We were like
Um,
3x tinfoil or something.
While we're on the topic of cassettes, I've been thinking about listening, and we grew up in an era where when you were getting new music or discovering new music, you were often buying albums. But a common theme of our culture at the time was making mixtapes, where you'd kind of curate your own uh, collection of songs. And I remember, you have to key up the cassette with the pencil to make sure you're getting all your lead time proper,
Right.
and timing it out so it fits in like the 45-minute cassette. Um,
Yep.
but That's what I think of when I think of you think of your own taste, you think of who you're making this tape for, and then you're curating a playlist in a way. And does it feel like for the greater craft food music listenership, you're just making like the best mixtape ever?
Yeah, I think there is an element of that. I think that, and maybe I look at it a little different because I'm a really weird person to have founded a streaming service that's a random play shuffle model, because I'm not really into that in my own listening. I like albums. I like to listen to a certain person, certain album, as opposed to shuffling, and I don't typically tend toward listening, streaming. Um, but I am aware all the time of the fact that, and this is you know due in no small part to your influence. I've spent my whole life with music that's, I've used the word magical before. I've spent my life with this amazing music. And so I do think of it as a way to um, try to share that, and try to, I guess, in that way, make this amazing, mixtape, make and share this amazing mixtape. Let's check out a track from Davina and the Vagabonds. A great example of somebody who's, there's some jazz in there, there's some soul, tons of soul. Just really love her sound. This song is called Sunshine.
Finally got my feet back on the ground. The clouds have cleared and gone away. Nothing's ever gonna bring me down. And my smile is finally here to stay. Sunshine from this day, baby. Sunshine from this day, oh. Never gonna cry no more, no more. My knees are never ever gonna touch the floor. But I think it's time to reevaluate your claim, changing everything about me except my name. I was made just fine, and so are you. Go find yourself something else to do. 'Cause sunshine from this day, baby. Sunshine from this day.
Do you think it's difficult for people to discover new music these days with the streaming platform as the main way that people access their music?
Well, I think it can be. So there's a couple, when you get to the technical side of the licensing and stuff for streaming platforms, which I've encountered both as in my work as a manager and then also developing this, there's interactive and non-interactive. Non-interactive is where it just comes at you, like Pandora, for example, and like our service. Interactive is where you're going in and seeking what you want, and I think a lot of people do that. And certainly when you're in the mode of going in and seeking out and playing what you want, you're not discovering. I've also heard from people that even when you're listening to the discovery playlists and things like that, that they're kind of hearing the major label influence on those lists. You can pick one thing that might even be obscure, and you end up inevitably back at some major label artist, roughly approximately in the vein of the person you first selected. So yeah, anecdotally, certainly people have said that it's hard. It's kind of hard to find new artists, and we're even going a step further than we're not just talking about finding indie rock artists or obscure artists in mainstream genres. We're kind of going into this territory that's mixing a lot of different things together. We've got contemporary classical ensembles that really kind of rock, and we've got groups that might be more jazz oriented if you had to pick a genre, and then we've got singer songwriter stuff and everything and all of the mixtures uh, in between.
One of the things that's great about craft brewed music is it introduces you to musicians who are playing genres with which you may be familiar, but using an instrument that may be unfamiliar or non traditional for that particular genre. And I think a great example of that is Jonathan Scales. This next track is the Jonathan Scales Forchestra playing Dream Life State. So, what is it that made you gravitate toward this kind of under the radar music? Because I remember when we first got to know each other, you were a huge Billy Joel fan.
Still
Uh,
am, still am.
still,
And Billy blends a
over,
lot of different things.
he does indeed, and yeah, honestly, one of my favorite Billy Joel tracks is "The Entertainer," which I think uh, for for an album of the time was a really cool blending of just layer upon layer upon layer of different influences as the song progresses,
And quite a
and
commentary on the music business.
as well as being a commentary on the music business as well.
You drove me to my first Billy Joel concert, by the way.
Is that right?
You were 16 or something. I was 15. Yep.
Wow. Was that
Anyway, we
Syracuse?
we digress. Yeah, I think that's right. The Carrier Dome in Syracuse.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. But my question is because certainly at that point, we're exposed to the music of our parents, perhaps our older siblings, which we each had one, and what's on the radio. But then, how do you get from that to something that's more esoteric?
Well, I mean, it's really it's it's pretty simple for me. I got in a band with you and Will Green and Orion, our drummer. But Orion and I were in the same grade. He had given me my first Billy Joel album, oddly enough, at my 10th birthday party. But anyway, we got in a band with you guys, a year older than us, and started playing jazz and playing fusion. And you introduced me to Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, and the Skip Hop and Wobble album, Jerry Douglas and Edgar Meyer and Russ Barenberg, and all of this music that mostly that was coming out of Nashville, but that wasn't country. Um, and I guess that just resonated in that, I followed that, that rabbit hole, and all these players tend to play with other people, and you can follow it, and follow one person, Bela Fleck, for example, and connect a lot of dots from there. And so, that just stuck with me, and I'm sure we went to other concerts that you drove to of those people. And so
We're
yeah,
very limited.
between
We're very limited by geography in upstate New York.
we were, and apparently me by your ability to take me somewhere. But yeah, so it was really that. And when I decided after college, I went to college to be a classical saxophone player. I am still a classical saxophone player, but after college, I wanted to go somewhere and broaden as a musician. And I got to thinking, if all that stuff that I love and have been listening to for years is coming out of Nashville, that's got to be a fertile place to be musically. And so I moved there, and I was there for 20 years. I just recently moved to the Atlanta area. So, and I got to meet all those people and work with them, and many of them are on Craft Brewed Music. And it's just been a really cool journey that way.
Craft Brewed Music features a lot of instrumental music as well. And one of my favorite instrumentalists is Howard Levy, who, of course, played harmonica with Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, a band that has a extremely important place in our formulation as musical characters.
Yeah.
And he continues to create amazing music. This is a track Howard Levy is playing with Chris Siebold, who is a fantastic guitar player. It's always interesting to see people stretching the limits of what that instrument can do. I myself am a guitarist and a huge fan of people who are innovating on this instrument like Chris. This is a track called Fade to Black. I'll also recall that the first trip to Nashville, I believe we did together.
That's also true. You were like at least telling me that you were thinking of moving there, and then you ditched me, and I went completely alone. But that's okay.
Yeah, but you met your wife there, though, and I think I just would have been in the way.
That's true. You change these little details, you never know what happens.
But all the classic venues in Nashville, we went to some of those for the first time together, and got to discover
right.
the city. And it's a city that I think will never be how it was, and it was at that time too. But for us,
sure.
speaking in modern day, I'm sure it's not like it was for us that first time either. Back in '98, is that right?
That would have been early '99.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to the Station Inn, I think, right? The Bluegrass Club.
Mm-hmm.
And it was surrounded by a gravel parking lot, and now that's all high-rise condos, and you get run over by pedal taverns and bachelorette parties and stuff. So it's very different there now. There's still plenty of cool stuff in Nashville, but it's not what it was 20 years ago, and when we were there, it wasn't what it had been 20 years earlier. But very cool place, and indeed very fertile musically.
Who do you think the craft brewed music listener is?
Well, I think that it's I get asked that a lot if I'm talking to people about marketing or when I was talking to investors and all that, and ideally maybe, or I think what the expectation is that I have some specific demographic information that says that they're 32 to 56 and whatever. And we've developed some of that, but basically it's again a kind of a gut level thing for me that tells me it's somebody that's not into chain experiences. It's the kind of person who, when they go to a new city, they want to find a local place, drink the local beer, maybe go to a local coffee house. They want to find what's out there that's not placed right in front of them, not shoved down their throat, and have kind of a very organic experience that way. And when obviously the craft describes that, right? And so when I had that idea to call this Craft Brewed Music, that came out of a conversation I had. I was on the road with two of our, who are now our Craft Brewed artists, and they were two of my clients, electric violinist Tracy Silverman and Roy Future Man Wooten from Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. I think we were in Minnesota or somewhere. They were playing together. And I was talking to somebody, and they said, "What kind of artists do you work with typically?" And just without thinking, I said, "Well, it's kind of craft music." And got to thinking about that later, and it was a perfect description for what I had built my company around, my management company. And I kind of started digging around. I couldn't believe that we had craft coffee, craft bourbon and other spirits, craft beer, craft burgers. Craft was being used everywhere, but nobody was really exploring the craft space in music. And I thought that this music was perfect for that. And so I think the people who are into all those things are into this kind of listening experience.
Let's listen to another artist.
Yeah, let's. Well, we're talking about craft coffee. Let's go with the song "Coffee" from Round Mountain. And this is a band that you mentioned. My wife, Erin, is a amazing singer songwriter, and made an album a few years ago and was touring with that album. And she was playing at Club Passim in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and opening for this band Round Mountain that we didn't know. I'd read that it was this duo of brothers, Robbie and Char Rothschild, and that between them they played like a dozen instruments or something. And so we didn't have any idea what to expect based on that. And literally, it was one of the most impressive, shocking, satisfying performances I think I've ever seen. Both of our jaws were just on the ground the entire show. We're watching somebody like Char playing trumpet and accordion at the same time, not gimmicky, all about the music. Just an unbelievable mountain of talent deployed in a really beautifully artistic way. And so I fell in love with the group, started working with them after that. Robbie is coming out with a solo album early next year. We'll have him here on the podcast and in Craft Brewed Music. And Round Mountain to me is kind of the quintessential musical example of craft brewed music. This is Coffee.
I cast my eyes up to the headlands, I cast my ashes out to sea. I am led from beneath by an unseen sun, and I'm the darkness that recedes. I got to grind all those dreams and sorrows, none too coarse and none too fine. I got to meet with the water and stain it gold and leave the grounds I was behind. How long do we have to climb? How long do we have to shine? Coffee, even in the dead of the night. Coffee.
with, I think those songs we selected hopefully offer a good cross section and give a good answer to the question, what is craft brewed music?
I think they do. Brian, you very kindly gave me credit for expanding your musical world back in the day when we were living in the wilds of upstate. And I myself am thinking to those who gifted me music. My Aunt Wendy and her boyfriend Kevin at the time were a instrumental force in kind of guiding my musical decisions at that time. They're the ones who got me my first ticket to a Bela Fleck and the Flecktones concert in Northampton,
I was going to
Massachusetts.
say, yeah, they were the ones in Northampton. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember seeing Bela Fleck and the Flecktones at the Iron Horse Saloon, and just having my mind completely blown by what people could do with those instruments and
Yeah.
with that vocabulary of different styles all put together with a funky groove and just having a great time on stage. And I hope that buying that first Bela Fleck and the Flecktones CD and coming home and sharing it with my friends and you guys in the band, if we can approach that kind of sharing experience with the greater listening world out there, then I think craft brewed music has done its job.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of really beautiful spin to put on it. And I'm looking forward to getting some of these artists in here to talk about it and talk about how they do what they do, why they do what they do, what is craft to them, because I think there's a lot to the craft thing. We're focused on the music side of it, but it's a really um, rich area in so many different ways. And I'm excited to get to kind of hear everybody's take on it. Our next episode is we're going to have the great beatbox saxophonist Derek Brown, and we're going to have really interesting conversations with a bunch of really interesting people, and I'm really excited about it.
I can't wait, Brian.
All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. It was fun talking with you, and we'll talk next time.
Sounds great.
Thanks for listening. For more Craft Brewed Music, visit craftbrewedmusic.com. Please feel free to rate, review, and share the show. See you next time.